ようこそどうぞはじめまして
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. We are sitting in the eye of the storm up ahead of the new anime season here, which means it's a good time to reflect on the ending anime season, with shows pretty much just wrapping up this past week for the summer 2019 season. And so today is going to be our final thoughts podcast on what we've been watching. So,
or haven't been watching in my case.
well, we're not going to talk about shows that no one on the podcast has watched, obviously. So we got you covered, Aqua. But yeah, so
sorry, Sinful Gear fans.
Yeah, which Sinful Gear would have only been like the third most gay thing on this list, interestingly enough. But we'll talk about that. I heard about the ending at least. All right, so on the podcast today, I'm Gel, and with me, as always, we have Iro.
Yep, hi, still here. I survived another season.
Iro has survived another season. We have Gee.
My firefighter soul is burning hot, so I'm ready to talk about some of the hot anime closing out.
You guys are really excited about Fire Force, huh? Yeah.
Oh yeah, can't get enough of that.
Didn't even make our list here. Is that even still running?
Yeah. So
okay.
It's continuing to next season, I think.
Okay, so we'll leave that one alone today. And joining us again, we have Aqua.
Yep. I mean, the fact that I'm here, despite having only seen 2 shows to the end, means that you can achieve everything you want as long as you have the right friends.
Yes. This is anime. The power of friendship always wins. So, all right. So we've got a lot to talk about. We have a lot of thoughts on all of these shows. We'll try to keep it as concise as possible, but I am making no promises. We've done these enough to know better, I think, at this point. So before we get to the proper TV shows, we do want to mention Iro and Gee finally got to see Promare in America.
Hell yeah.
Actually, Promare, apparently.
What?
Yeah,
I know, right?
I know. We're still trying to wrap our heads around it. Like, apologies if I accidentally mix up the pronunciations this podcast, but apparently, yes, the official pronunciation of the movie is the English phonetic pronunciation, not the Japanese phonetic pronunciation.
That just flipped the entire universe on its head for me.
I know. It's actually, where did you hear that, Iro? I remember you told me that, but where?
Well, they literally were saying it out loud. So, I mean,
really?
any trailer or pre-release thing where they said the title out loud, it was Promare.
Uh-oh. I guess I didn't pay attention.
Also, inside the movie, they said Promare.
They did? Huh, okay.
Is Promare like an actual concept in the film?
Maybe, yes.
Sure.
So you're saying this movie is not about Italians who are in favor of the sea, but it is about a female horse that is very good at racing?
A professional.
Indeed.
Yeah.
No, so that was Horse Girls, but PA Works. That was a while ago.
That's the alternate title for whatever. What was that show called? I don't even remember.
I don't fucking remember.
Yeah, I cannot remember.
Point is, Promare was pretty good.
Yeah. So what's the spoiler take? The spoiler-free take on Promare?
Top 3 things Trigger has done today.
Yeah. I'd say that it is definitely
like the 5 things Trigger has done.
I'd say Promare is definitely up there with the likes of Little Witch Academia and Inferno Cop. I think that Promare is
for the record. What are 1 and 2? What is 1 and 2 for you guys?
Little Witch Academia 2.
Probably Little Witch Academia 2. Now I think
Gridman.
You pick Gridman. Interesting. Okay, I was gonna say now my number 2 and 3 is like a 3-way tie between Kill la Kill, Promare, and Inferno Cop. I feel like I signed a contract like with the devil, like when Trigger as a studio was created, where I was like, please make Trigger the studio I wish it would be, and it was like, all right, but you always have to keep Inferno Cop in your top 3 Trigger anime of all time. And I was like, so be it, I'll take that deal. So
you forgot look, this is the third best thing Trigger have ever done, after number 1, Turning Girls, and number 2, that one music video they did for Momoiro Clover where they fight Gene.
Oh shit! That was totally a thing.
Actually.
What about the Gee commercial?
Yeah, right, what about the Project X Zone opening?
All right, so we don't have a consensus on 1 and 2, but Promare is a good bet for number 3. Huh?
Promare is go in and expect it to be an Imaishi / Nakashima work, because that's exactly what it is. Everything you think that will happen in that, based on those two being the creators, is probably going to happen in that movie.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I mean, that's like a that's a real like a reductive way to put it, but like I think Iro totally has it where, like the real silver lining to that statement is, if you were ever worried that like the Imaishi Nakashima combo was like a fluke, that like Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill were just like lucky coincidences, I feel like 2 is a coincidence, 3 is a trend. I think Promare is kind of proof in the pudding that those two can do some wild shit.
Right. It was not my statement was not meant to be derogatory in any way.
Oh, no. Sorry, I didn't mean to imply that either. Sorry. I guess. But
well,
yes, you are correct.
Yeah, it could come off as, oh, it's the same old thing. So, but that's not necessarily the case,
right? Like I don't.
Or
yeah,
if
like,
it is, that's a good thing.
Yes, I think the way I want to put it is like, yes, Promare is definitely like, it is Maishi's very like body sensibilities tempered by Nakashima's like
more escalation.
Yeah, his brand of like narrative escalation, and it makes something that is like, I think with a conversation we've had in the past is like, the really cool thing about Trigger as a studio is that now in 2019 we no longer just call it the Imaishi studio, right? Like I think that was always the worry with Trigger's reputation is, sex, mock speed, and violence or whatever is just going to be, that's just Trigger in a nutshell, right? It's just Imaishi going crazy. But then we got Little Witch Academia, which proved that like, Trigger, like there's more than one premier talent at Trigger. And then we got Gridman with Amamiya, proving once again that like this is a studio capable of exploring like things in a similar umbrella, but with different approaches to it.
They have more range than
they have more range than we ever expected they would. But despite that, like, Promare is like putting on like a very comfortable pair of like the nicest tailored shoes you've ever seen. It is Promare is Trigger at its like most outsized, its most personable, its most like technically well put together. It is everything about like the stereotypes about Trigger and like the stereotypes about Imaishi as a creator, but also I think on a technical level, I don't think they've ever made anything quite like this. Like, even compared to like the work they were doing at Gainax, I think that Promare it hits a scale and energy that like is unlike anything I've ever seen from them before.
That's a pretty bold claim, particularly considering the amount of like CG in play. I was going to kind of ask you how you feel about that.
That movie is like 50% CG.
Yeah, it's a lot of CG, but I'd say it's done well because, like, I think, as I've said in the past with our conversations about movies like, Into the Spider-Verse, I've never been like, unanimously opposed to CG. I think that it's just that CG is a tool, and it is a tool that unfortunately I think Japanese creators tend to use poorly. But they did a really good job with the CG in this movie, I think. Like, they really take advantage of like the kind of camera cuts and movements you can do in CG. Like, the color palette is very well suited for CG animation. Like, the most important thing I think they did is that the 2D scenes are drawn and colored to look like the 3D style. So, like, you can still tell when it is
instead of the other way around. Usually,
yeah.
is
Yeah,
the
usually
problem.
where it's the other way around, where the CG is like a poor imitation of the 2D style. Here, I think they actually, I'd have to like read an interview to get for confirmation of this, but I feel like their intent was actually to make the 2D emulate the CG, and so you could still tell which is which, but on average, scene to scene, it does flow together pretty well, and I think that's why it makes the movie work on a visual level.
Yeah, I mean, we've probably all seen the trailers and whatnot at this point, so we have some idea. But I'm sure it's more impressive once you see the whole movie, as far as how they integrate that all.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think it is a very good movie.
Yeah.
I am.
There's some cool fucking shit in that movie, man. Like it's like not to
don't
bag
answer
too
this.
much. Sure.
Don't answer this, but do they go to space? Don't answer that. Go ahead.
I will not answer that. But I was gonna say not to. I guess here's the thing. I'm not here to like fucking just bag on Fire Force all the time. But it is really striking watching those. Like, I think we literally watched like Promare on Thursday and then Fire Force on Friday, and like it's really striking the difference in like they're both like very keenly animated shows about people ostensibly fighting fires in the least firefighting-esque way, and
well,
it's just the difference in the energy and the personality that at play.
To be fair, they've been working on Promare for a very long time. Like,
true.
That's like going back to, they announced that in that block with Darling and the Franks and Gridman way back when. So
yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad to hear it lived up to expectations. And
yes, and by the time this podcast is out, I'm afraid it'll probably be too late. But like, if you can find a theater showing, I would highly recommend it. Like, I feel like they made this movie for theaters. Like the scale and like the angles it operates on feels like it's meant to be watched on a screen that's like gigantic. But I realize it got a very limited run, so by the time this podcast is out, there probably aren't any more showings. So
yeah, unfortunately, the rest of us will probably need to just wait until other means become available.
Yes, they did announce the home release is going to be February of 2020. So,
oh wow, this feels like a long time off considering how long the movie's been out. Because we just got it here, but it's been out for a while in Japan, right? So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Y'all should have seen it in theaters when you had the chance, man.
Yeah, well, I'm too lazy for all that to go see it. But yeah. All right. Well, again, I'm glad that sounds like that worked out, and we will catch up with that again in February, I guess. All right. So let's move along to TV shows and what we've been watching. And we're going to kick off with Carole and Tuesday, primarily because it's technically not over as of recording, right? Does that come out?
I think there's one more episode later this week.
Next week. Okay.
Yeah.
So as of recording, there's still an episode left, but we're probably never going to have opportunity to talk about it again. So let's touch base on that one. How are we looking going into the final episode at this point?
Not good.
Has the I haven't been watching, so you guys are gonna have to help me out here. Was the political stuff taking over the show?
Kinda.
Yeah, like, but not in a very seamless way, or not in a.
It's shaping up to be very. The bad politicians are trying to get rid of music because it doesn't fit their politics. They're gonna censor us all. So, but don't worry, the presidential candidate's just being brainwashed by the evil consultant. So, if we get all the musicians together to do a big collab, we'll prove the power of music and
end racism with a music festival.
Go ahead, G.
It's just really, it's disappointing that this is kind of how this show is ending up, because like you can tell that like Watanabe's heart might be in the right place, but like it runs into the problem where the show is trying to like be too many things at once, because like it's a show that is simultaneously trying to tackle like very like, you know, very tough relevant imagery, you know, of like literal ICE raids on immigrants, right? Like, you know, there are literal scenes of like, you know, immigration like cops like
It
busting,
says Mars Ice on
like,
their jackets.
yes, literally mice raids, and like, you know, busting immigrants and like, you know, imprisoning them in camps. But then at the same time, the show is like so like, it's a fucking jet set radio shit. Like the politicians are literally saying, "Oh, music is the most subversive form of culture, thus we must stamp it down." And it's like, what? No, like, like. I hate to be that guy, but honestly, tell me the last fucking time music of all things, like especially pop music, actually ushered in like notable social upheaval. And
yeah.
it's and like, yeah, and it's literally, the plot is angling towards, we're gonna throw a big music festival with all the artists left that haven't been arrested yet, and we're gonna like, that music festival will somehow end the like growing racial tension and aggressions that have been like simmering in this society this entire show.
Well, my biggest worry, which seems like it's probably going to come true, was this whole thing they've been hyping up with Carole and Tuesday chasing the world, is like there's going to be this like magical healing moment when they perform where suddenly everybody sees eye to eye and the world is healed, and like
all those Entrati switch sides, right? And start fighting.
Except in this case, they don't have powers over them or whatever. But putting them across the side, like I get it, and I can see how, like G, you were saying, maybe their heart is in the right place with bringing attention to these things. But like, I feel like also now is not the time for that kind of silly optimism type of stuff, like, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, it sucks to sound that cynical, but it's just like,
no,
if you were to make a show about, like, because this show is like playing with some very like relevant, like populist, conservative, like dogma, but then it is also like, but it just doesn't work because like, a music festival is not a real answer. And I'm not saying that Carole and Tuesday should have real answers for these very real issues, but the answer it has come up with is almost insultingly saccharine.
Right. It almost makes me think of like that ill-fated Pepsi commercial from a couple years ago. You guys remember that with the...
I can't believe you made me remember that fucking Pepsi commercial.
Oh god.
where you had like the protesters and the police and like what's her name?
Yeah.
It brings them a Pepsi and suddenly all the problems are solved.
Gotta love it when the multi-billion-dollar corporation tries to sell you the message of
that's kind of what it makes me think of, but maybe that's not fair. I don't know. But Aqua, are you still keeping up with this? Do you have any...
I'm trying. I'm not exactly caught up, but I think I'm overall more like into this show because of reasons I have explained on previous podcasts.
Right.
But I think like I can't really, judge the idea because it hasn't come up yet at the point where I'm at. But I think you could make a case for this idea of like, let's make a show about these pop stars rising to fame, and in the background there is incredible political upheaval, racial tension, anti-immigrant rhetoric and stuff happening, and they try to respond to that in their music. But I think that in order to do that well, you have to focus on their powerlessness as artists. That you could like end on like they say like, okay, we got to do something. We're famous musicians. We got to take a stand. We gotta Taylor Swift us up. We can't stay silent in the face of all of this horrible conservative violence. So we're gonna throw a big concert just to show that there are still people out there who care about other people. We're going to get all our friends and throw a big concert. And I think the ideal way, like, to thematically end that thing, you could have them have their concert, which shows that there is still, good in the world. But then the evil conservative politician still wins the election.
Right.
And you could sort of play based on that contrast to like say something about how musicians do try to use their power for good, but are ultimately only like representative of even though they are superstars, they are only representative of a very small group of people. And most of the people don't really care about what pop stars have to say and are mostly influenced by their gut.
Right.
Like you could say something about this idea of like, everyone in Hollywood hates Trump, yet somehow Trump is still the president, and show how that like contrasts Hollywood with the average Joe, something like that.
Yeah, right, like that very uncomfortable conversation about like how actually pop culture maybe does not have, nearly as much like sway or impact in the real world as maybe the people who are a part of it hope it would.
Right. Yeah, and it's hard. It's very hard to do that and keep that fine line of being like too cynical. Like, just to, I guess, counterbalance my point earlier. Like, I don't want that. I don't want to go that route necessarily, but that's kind of also the reality of the situation, right? So, like, it takes a level of nuance and good writing and things like that to handle that in a way that doesn't swing either too far into being too optimistic and, saccharine, as you said, G, or, swinging the other way and being cynical and saying there's no hope at all.
Right.
And I don't get the impression the show is capable of handling that.
You get the problem and I think that Carole and Tuesday is kind of a show stuck between two extremes, and two extremes that you can perfectly like embody in another Watanabe anime. Mainly one extreme, it is Space Dandy. It is an anthology series about wacky characters in a strange, situation, which is the music industry on Mars, and we can have them do whatever we want, and then we get episodes like the music video episode,
right,
or the Ertigan goes bankrupt episode. And then
the good part.
Yeah, and then on the other hand, we have, I say Watanabe, but of course it's stupid to attribute a show that is not even being written by him. He's the director. But let's just go with Watanabe for now, like feeling pressured to, like Carole and Tuesday in the show, use his celebrity status to say something about what's going on in the world. And the two ideas not really mixing well. I think if Watanabe wanted to make a show that was purely about politics, he could pull it off. He made Terror in Resonance, which was not a perfect show, but which was at least a show that handled the political stuff better than Carole and Tuesday does. And I think that is his real ambition. He wants to make entertainment that is also here to, give people a kick under the butt, teach them to, wake up sheeple, and know what's going on, no filter, this is what's happening in the world. And I generally think he does a good job at that, like to the point where it actually makes you uncomfortable that seeing something like this in fiction and you think, well, this is completely ridiculous, and then you read the news and you see that kind of stuff is actually happening. That was the kind of thing you had with Terror in Residence. They can be this corrupt, and they totally are. And now you get the same thing again with Carole and Tuesday. But it is the fact that he's trying to, sort of unite those two things that he likes to do, and the fact that these two things really don't go together all that well.
It might not even be in his control entirely if it's a committee or like many people trying to pull the show in many different directions. Yeah. Who knows? But
like this is a simplification, because of course it is not in the hands of one man to decide.
Right. So it's these are always frustrating because there's good bits that feel like they could have pulled this together into something really good, and when it doesn't come together, it's makes it more frustrating, I guess. But all right, well, unless anybody else has anything to add on that, we should probably move along.
Well, yeah, we should talk about a show that, compared to Carole and Tuesday, could not pull it together by any single objective metric possible, but did in fact manage to introduce its political subplot in a far more seamless manner.
Okay, well, let's remember Copcraft, which we have not really talked about in a long time.
No.
For various reasons. Perhaps it didn't merit it up to now. But it's over, right? At this point?
We still have one more episode, I think.
Oh, okay.
Because they had to take they had to do a recap episode in a 12-episode anime, which tells you everything you need to know about how the production of that anime went.
All right, so, well, how are we looking then on this moving into the ending then?
Iro, do you want to get into it, since you're the person who kind of brought up the comparisons with Carole and Tuesday while we were watching?
Yeah, so like Carole and Tuesday, Copcraft introduced a political subplot because, like, the setting up till now has involved all of the alternate world stuff, and, like, the city has all of the fairies and elf people and whatever from the other world, and it's, your thinly veiled immigration allegory, by which I mean they have an election and stuff going on in the show with your, like, racist candidate and all that, saying no more immigration, those Samanians are coming in and stealing our jobs, and they're not paying taxes, etc.
Yeah.
All that stuff. But I think because, like, the show's had Exdilica as a main character the whole time, and the writing has always been on this sort of street level of this, like, casual sort of tone to it, the sort of glib way in which the characters address her and other Samanian characters, like, reflects reality a lot more closely, I think, than Carole and Tuesday. Like, Carole and Tuesday is trying to make big, grand, sweeping statements about, how we need to end racism or whatever, and that's fine, but the way Copcraft is doing it strikes me as more realist. I mean,
they're not presenting
realistic.
They're not presenting some magic bullet to end racism, like,
right.
Like, there's this whole conversation about in, like, the most recent episode where Exdilica is like, oh, actually, I'm kind of lucky to be a Samanian whose colleagues are understanding of my origins or whatever, and not, like, yeah, you say shitty kind of racist shit sometimes, but also you respect me as a human being.
Right.
You respect me as a person.
Like, because it is very much street level, like, for those who are not familiar with Copcraft, because we haven't brought it up in literal months, it is essentially a kind of buddy cop procedural about, like, a grizzled cop named Kei Matoba, and essentially a fairy knight from another world named Talarna Exdilica, and they don't get along, but together they fight crime. It's like, the thing is, like, Iro totally nails it. He totally nails what Copcraft does so well. But, like, the thing is that it is in the context of what is a very pulpy, episodic, buddy cop, like, crime procedural, and because it is so street level this whole time, like any kind of buddy cop duo, these two are trading jabs at each other all the time, right? Like, Kay calls her a fucking alien, and, like, she's
space alien,
right, and she has, like, her own slur for, like, people, or for humans, and, like, like, oh, you boorish, clumsy oaf humans, and all this stuff, right? And it's like, it does a better job of showing kind of, like, a more, quote unquote, a more grounded take on cultural and racial integration in a very recently multicultural society, and the tensions that come from that. And like that politician who like the very like make Earth great again like politician, you know, he's not like some like cartoonish like we're gonna like put the fairies in camps and like gas them or something. Like he's saying the kind of shit that any shitty conservative politician says. Like they grill him and he says like, now I don't hate the Samanians. That's what they're called, like the fairy people. He's like, I don't hate the Samanians. However, if they come to Earth, they need to integrate into our language and culture. Like that's what immigrants are supposed to do. And it's like that's a shitty thing to say, but it's also a believable shitty thing to say.
Right.
Like that's exactly what like one of these kinds of politicians would say to like deflect from like the violence that his like populist rhetoric is inciting.
As bad as things are, we're still not at the point where I could see somebody saying we're banning music.
Right. Like and like there's a good bit where like
not yet.
No, not yet. Like there's a lot of good bits where like Talarna is like talking about like because this whole like plotline is about an election and about like democracy and like it's like many like intrinsic flaws and about how democracy is a system that has to be upheld by the people. And Matsuba channeling a lot of Yang energy when he drops a line that he says like, well, you see, Talarna, democracy is not about what's best, it's about what's better. And I was like, man, the show actually kind of gets it in a way that it's like really like stupid presentation and tone like completely belies.
Yeah, which is to say the production on that show has completely fallen apart around episode 3. Like it looks like shit. Almost everything about that show is just not really coming together other than the writing.
Right. It's really a shame.
I gotta say though, man, that's a very good line. That's like the anime equivalent of "Do you think God stays in his heaven out of fear of what he created?" Which is an incredibly deep sounding line, which is also from Spy Kids.
That's right. Yeah,
it's a good comparison because like here's the thing: Copcraft is pulpy. It's, you know, they're dealing with a necromancer pimp who is like, you know, ascending like mega zombie assassins after our duo, you know, like they took a fucking vampire casket to their like literally to their right to their like police mortician, like, you know, their forensics department, where they just, of course, like the idiots they are, just crack it open and start like taking blood samples, and then surprise the vampire jumps out and like starts killing people. And so it's a very
one second. When you say necromancer pimp, is that like he's a necromancer, he's a pimp by day and a necromancer by night?
He's a necromancer.
Does he combine the necromancer and pimp jobs?
We joke. It's more just he is a regular creepy necromancer, like wizard, but he dresses like fucking ridiculous. Like he's got like a red robe that goes down to like his knees and like a red hat with a feather in it or some shit. It's
not like he's pimping out corpses or something.
There's an actual Catholic priest pimp in that show who's a supporting character. Fucking show is ridiculous. I love it. I wish it was better made because
maybe it's best to just read the novels if those. I don't know if they're available in English.
It's a weird situation where I'm almost like maybe the light novels are actually better in this situation.
What's his name? Shoji
Gato.
Yeah, the writer of Full Metal Panic
and Magi Brilliant Park.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just like it's a shame because that show. I'm not saying that show deserves like that much better. This show deserves at least a competent. Yes, it deserves at least a competent adaptation, not what this is. And I don't know. It's too bad. It's a shame, but
show could have been better.
You know, but that is kind of the story of Copcraft.
Pour one out for Copcraft, then.
Yep.
Well, if we would like to move on to a show that got a more than competent adaptation. Let's
that it didn't deserve.
So let's say some final words for Demon Slayer. Has anything really changed with Demon Slayer since we last talked about it?
No.
I if I'm being entirely honest, I don't even know what else we have to really say. Like,
they're making a
These last
movie.
yeah,
It is over,
Yeah.
right? Because you never know with these shonen things.
Season 1
It
is
is-
over. It ended with a
Yes.
trailer for a movie of the next
Okay.
arc in the
Yeah.
manga.
yes,
And it's been doing quite
Taking
well, is
place
my
on the-
understanding. So
yeah.
I don't know.
So
I mean,
I was going to say,
Sorry, go
in a
ahead.
nutshell, extremely pretty adaptation of very average material.
Yeah.
yes.
Set the
I mean,
one sentence summary.
like, I really don't think we have much else to say. Like, any complaint we had about Demon Slayer last podcast still holds true now.
Yeah.
So,
Did they at least have a cool
It's,
fight in the final episode or something? Or
no, the last 3 episodes have literally just been a training arc.
oh wow,
The remember like a month ago when we talked about how everyone's talking about because the cool fight, that was the climax
right?
of the
That was
season.
the last cool fight, like 4
Yes.
episodes ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So they're really banking on this movie thing, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like the show has been super popular, so maybe we'll just see a straight up
Yeah. I mean,
teaser or something. But
I mean, it also sounds like it has a serious spacing issue. Like they just kept on adapting material until they ran out of episodes without thinking about what kind of narrative arc
it was going to end on.
you would have across your season.
yeah, basically.
Like, oh, we finished the big arc like 4 episodes before the end of our show, and now we're spending, the rest on this training for
Yup.
the next thing, which will be
Yup.
its separate movie. That's really amateur.
if I'm being frank,
Amateur.
if I'm being frank, everything other than the actual quality of the animation is not that well done. Like the pacing, the writing, we've said it time and time again. Like other than like the technical aspects of the animation and Yuki Kajiura's soundtrack, nothing else about Demon Slayer is that impressive. And it still holds true now as much as it did like when we were saying this all the way back in like episode 5. So
Yep.
Yeah.
like I think you could a listener could say, why did you guys watch it to completion? And the answer is I don't know, but we finished it, and I feel like at this point, whenever season 2 and the movie shows up, I'll be happy to skip those this time. I think we gave Demon Slayer its a more than a fair shake, a fairer shake than we give a lot of mediocre anime.
You're really alley-ooping this one for me to the next show, G, I think.
So, Jel, tell us, do you love your mom and her 2 multi-target attacks?
No.
No.
I was going to say...
You don't love your mom and her 2 multi-target attacks?
I don't love this guy's mom and her 2 hit multi-target attacks.
What about her mom power, her ultimate mom ability? Mom says no.
Yes, that did happen, but I was going to segue with the speaking of shows that I'm not sure why I continued watching through its entirety.
Oh, yes, I gathered.
Yes, the
Isn't that the story of your life?
Aqua continues taking shots at Jill's taste in anime.
You've already established, Aqua. You think I have terrible taste in anime, and you are 100% correct. This show is the stupidest thing I've ever watched.
Wow, really?
No, it probably isn't. But it tried to do... In the end, I think it tried to do way too many things. Some of the comedy aspects, I think it did well, particularly how it handled the game elements. It handled the game elements better than probably most isekai that I can think of, actually making funny jokes out of them and like acknowledging that this is just a stupid video game and not like just ignoring that as an excuse for your fantasy world or whatever. Like I think I told you guys the one joke with like the GM character who's like basically, I hate to make this reference, but Kenny from South Park and just dies every episode.
Sure.
And she's like, "Oh, this game is still in beta. Be careful when walking around this area because it's not finished." And then she like glitches through a tree and dies. Stuff like that happens.
I mean, you could say that's an easy joke, but like, I feel like surprisingly few of these video game isekai actually play with the video game part of it. So,
right. Yeah, so they handle the humor stuff well. That was part of what attracted to me in the beginning. In the first episode, I was like, oh, this show actually has the potential to be pretty funny, and sometimes it was. But they try to mix in. I've talked about the gross fan service stuff, which was really weird because they just go 0 to 100 in maybe like 3 of the 12 episodes, and then there's nothing for the rest of the show. And then they try to do like actual serious reflection on the nature of
what, motherhood?
Of motherhood and the like changes in relationships between children and their mothers as they get older, and how they may start to resent them and stuff like that. And like it's just like, really?
Okay.
Really? You want me to take this seriously after you just had a tentacle scene?
This is the same show where like, oh no, mommy gets covered in slime and falls onto her son.
Yes.
Is also the same show trying to be like, man, motherhood, huh? The relationship between a child and parent, really?
Yeah. So they actually try to get into some of that, and it's like, do you really want me to buy into this at this? Yeah. So it spreads itself a little too thin and only really succeeds, I think, in the comedy stuff. And there's just some really stupid things, like G, you were mentioning in the last episode. So I'll share this one anecdote as the example of how stupid the show is. So the final boss is this girl who has like this reflect power, and so like all their attacks are just bouncing off of her. And so Mom finally gets mad because hasn't really been mad this whole show, and she's like, "I'm going to scold you," and she pulls out her ultimate mom ability. Mom says no, in which case she points her finger and says no, and it shoots a giant laser beam that sends the girl through the wall. And she's like,
oh shit.
She's like, why didn't it reflect my attack? And she's like, I wasn't attacking you, I was scolding you.
I don't know, man. That sounds dumb as hell, but that also sounds almost okay.
It was kind of funny, I got to admit, but that's the type of stupidity we were operating with on this show, and they were definitely setting up for more episodes. I don't know if it'll actually happen, but like they basically defeated one of the 4 fiends rebelling against all motherhood, and
one of the bad moms.
No, this actually wasn't a mom. This was one of the kids.
Okay.
But she wanted to make all mothers disappear. That was the arc, the final arc.
What?
And so now they end with them having to go out and find the other 3. But I don't know if the show has enough traction to pull another season out or whatever. But
so. In comparison to the ultimate mom ability being Mom Says No, does that mean during the dad expansion, the ultimate dad power is I'm not angry at you, just disappointed?
I thought it was going to be go ask your mother, but maybe we should write our own. Maybe we should write our own spin-off show for that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you love your dad and his mana-based damage power drill?
All right.
Well, that show,
I survived somehow, and now I can just let it drift off into.
Yes, one of the like three shows you decided to watch to completion this season.
I didn't count all of them, but did I miss one? Maybe it was only 3. I don't know.
But tell us more about this other show.
The next one
I was trying to help you segue into the next one here. But
one of the other shows, of course, was Given, which I've been championing. Championing, is that a verb?
Championing.
There we go. This season, ending was fantastic. The whole last sequence. I was telling you guys, it's sort of like a super slow burn romance, and they kind of poured gasoline and lit a match on it toward the end.
Oh, really?
We kind of led up to they only do one performance in the entire series, which I liked because it took the whole show to get the guy who knew nothing about guitars to the point where he could perform live. It wasn't just like he picked up a guitar and could magically play. So it actually took a long time to get to the point where it's like, hey, we can actually do a show now. And even then, like when they do the show, they're like, wow, that guy could sing, but his guitar playing sucks. So I appreciated that. But point is, they kind of built up to this one big like emotional performance where the the guy, they do their like first original song, and he wrote the lyrics where he's like pouring out his heart about his boyfriend that killed himself, which I've talked about in previous episodes. And at the end, it's like this big emotional outpouring where him and the other main guy realize that they're actually in love with each other, and he plants one on him, and then they run off, and it's like this big like climax of the show. And then we get to the last episode.
Okay.
Which is like this super chill, like almost comedy thing, epilogue thing that's so good. It was so perfect. Like the episode kicks off with him with the big confession, like, let's talk about what happened last night. And
people talking in
it was
anime?
like, yeah, I like you. Do you like me too?
Wow, what is this?
And there's this hilarious. I'm not going to spoil the whole sequence or go through it, but there's like this hilarious sequence, including like, I think I showed you guys some of the screen caps with like giant rainbow letters that say it's mutual, in case there's any doubt what's going on here. So take that subtext. But but and then it ends like with the guy remembering this conversation he had with the band where he said, I would absolutely never allow anybody in the band to date another band member. So then they have to like go like seek the blessings of their cool senpais in the band, and they like talk about what are they going to do from here, what's the band going to do, are we going to keep making music? They're like, yeah, let's, I'm excited to keep making music, and we get to date now and all this stuff, and it's just like a really good ending. And yeah, show is such a good show. I totally exceeded my expectations, especially for my the first episode where I was not sure the writing was going to hold up, and the writing had to be great. They actually sounded like some facsimile of real human people having real human conversations about real feelings, which yeah, so I mean, I think it's secretly, again, one of the best shows, if not the best show of the season, in my opinion. So everybody please go watch that at some point before the end of the year.
I mean, it sounds like a great thing. Like I'm actually pretty interested. Like,
yeah, you should check out Aqua, so I can get some support for our top 10 at the end of the year.
I can't make promises because I'm terrible at watching things.
Yeah, well, if you get to one thing on the backlog,
this sounds like the one like a show that we're so used to dismissing boys love anime because we have this like this idea in our heads as like, oh, it's all just the rapey stuff with the creepy power dynamics that is just there to please the girls who are into that kind of stuff, but it doesn't really care about the feelings.
Right. I mean, it's either that or it's like,
and it's really nice to see.
It's like either that or it's like all that subtext that like is never actually expounded on.
Yeah. And it's really nice to see a show that actually goes out of his way to go like to be a genuinely well-written romance, and I think the point that they make it quote-unquote explicit is not necessarily what attracts me to it. It's more like we're taking this seriously. We're not using this as a series of tropes, of a series of cliches that we need to follow in order to be seen as a proper boys love story. Like this is the same thing that I told about that I
with Bloom Into You
talked about with Bloom Into You. Like follow these steps to be accepted as, and just tell a great story about what you want to say, and integrate those aspects. I mean, it really sounds like it comes from a good place. Like for someone who's like actually like, okay, I love boys love. Now let's see how I can how I can expand upon it instead of always using the same cliches. But the thing is that as someone, who only knows boys love from the stuff that makes it to anime, you get very much the same thing as it is with Yuri stuff, like where the stuff that gets made into an anime is only like usually only the most cliched kind of stuff. Where you get
the stuff that's going to be the most popular, and
where you get the stuff like, whoa, this is what everyone thinks boys love is, and then all of the stuff that's actually good, because like any genre, boys love has many different, shades to it, many different stuff, many different themes, many different character dynamics. And it's always nice to see, the one slip through the net, as it were, and like make it through that surface of like that percentile of shows that gets turned into an anime. So it can show to like the mainstream rubes. Like, I mostly think we are for this particular genre. Like, no, this is not what you think it is. This is
Right.
genuine. And whether you're, and I think that's overall better for the genre as a whole, whether it is something that you're not into because EU boys kissing, which means you suck, or whether it's something you're not into because it objectifies gay men and turns their love into something to be consumed by straight women, blah 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 blah. Like it both of those people can learn more about the genre because shows like this getting the opportunity to be turned into an anime, and I think that's good, not just for the genre, but for anime as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, even a small amount, it feels like progress, and I hope that we get more content like this in the future. Because I'll readily admit, maybe a lot of my opinion in the beginning was shaped by the fact that I heard this was a boys' love manga, and I figured it was going to go down a certain path, and all the characters were going to start getting rapey at some point, and like that doesn't happen in the show. And it ended up proving me wrong. So, like I said, I hope we get more stuff, more of a broader range of content from, that particular genre. All right. So we're going to move on to a show that perhaps doesn't have people talking like normal human beings in natural conversation.
Oh boy!
I'm sorry, Aqua. I think you enjoyed this a lot more than I did, but
I mean, you're free to do so.
Let's say some parting words for O Maidens in Your Savage season.
Yep.
What did you think about the ending, Aqua? It was kind of it was certainly something.
It was a sort of like a weird, like, I found it entertaining because it was a part where the two faces of the show came together, where it was both like an incredibly absurd, farcical spectacle, and on the other hand, an overblown, overwrought melodrama, sort of running in.
Oh, it got funny again.
Sort of running into each other. Yeah, it did get funny again in the later episodes. They did add some humor. I mean, like, the drama comes to a sort of boiling point where Milo Sensei finally like caves to Hongo and decides to take her to a love hotel, to where they do nothing, of course. But Sonozaki and her boyfriend follow them, with a lot of hilarious hijinks as a result. But they get spotted by someone, I don't know, and as a result they get kicked out of school because they were in the red light district doing unsavory things.
They clamped down because one of the girls got pregnant, one of the side characters, right?
Yeah.
And then so they clamped down on like boys and girls cannot hang out together anymore or be together at all. And then so they tried to make an example of Sonozaki because they saw her and her boyfriend around a love hotel, even though they were just following the other two.
So the literature club girls, after lots of character development and having learned that sex is good, actually decide to raid the school and like
they kidnap the school.
Squat there, kidnapping Milo Sensei, tying him up all Shibari style, and then like yelling out of the window, like, we're keeping him hostage as long as you don't reverse this rule on same-sex, on opposite-sex relationships. So it gets a bit ridiculous and like funny and farcical.
That's certainly not where I expected that show to go based on its like middle chapters.
Like I said last time, the show got itself back on rails as soon as Kazusa and Izumi hooked up. Like, where you got some of that like weird teen anxiety / cringe comedy back into it.
Oh, did they finally
there
get their
was a
shit
little bit of
together?
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
But,
kind of.
like,
He almost blows it at the end.
yeah. But so that brings us to the finale where Sonozaki, and her boyfriend come to the school and be like, you girls are being ridiculous. Stop this. You don't have to do this for my sake, blah, blah, blah. So they all end up in the same classroom where, the tensions reach a boiling point because, we still have Nina there, Sugawara, who wants to confess to Izumi, who is Kazusa's boyfriend at that point. And we have Momo, who thinks all of this is ridiculous, but is secretly also super gay. But they keep giving her signs that they wouldn't accept that. Because she keeps asking them, if I were a boy, would you date me? Or isn't kissing something you could do with a friend? Or she keeps asking them extremely loaded, extremely subtle questions, and they're sort of dismissive about that. So the tensions come to a boiling point, and then Milo Sensei decides to play a game that is
it's like color hide and seek, which I'm not even going to try to explain.
Yeah,
but
it's like a really ridiculous game. It's like Calvin Ball, basically, but with the rules so that, everyone has their big cathartic release as they run, because it's like a kind of tag. So they run through the corridors and hide in classrooms, and everyone is their big confrontational moment where they all make up, and it's stupid and overblown, and it is the most Mario Okada thing ever, where we have everyone running around screaming their feelings at the top of their lungs, and
that sure sounds like it.
Yeah, it's the ending of Anohana, turned up to 11 Spinal Tap style. But
I wouldn't quite go that far.
The ending of Anohana is already fucking the most Mario Kart fucking thing in the world. So to hear this compared to that is
yes, but it is also
I wouldn't quite go that far, but it's in the same.
It is the same idea, but it's also sort of so steeped in bathos that it becomes ridiculous again in a way that is completely fitting for this show. In a way that is instead of
it's more fun,
feel for these anxious teens in the springtime of their youth, and it's more haha, look at these stupid children, thinking that this is the most important thing of their life. So
right,
in that way, I kind of give it a pass because it's because it's true to the spirit of the show. It is true to the spirit of the show in every sense, in that it is both farcical and completely over the top, and also dramatic and steeped in teen angst and romantic anguish, and it is the most perfect ending that show could have gotten. And whether I think you like that ending or like what they did and how they did it is in many ways decided on by whether you like the show as a whole.
Yeah, I think it was an appropriate ending for the path that we were on, as wild as it was. I guess I just made the mistake of watching this immediately after Given, where
you were expecting people to come to term with their character development
I went from people talking like normal human beings and hashing out their feelings, and yes, they're anxious and awkward and uncomfortable, but it's felt I've had these types of conversations before. To We've reached an impasse. Let's play this weird version of hide and seek, and everyone yell their feelings through the hallway in the school at night. It was. It was just really, guys, really.
The joke is that the hammiest and most deluded of them all, being Sonozaki, ends up being the most rational one, having the most vanilla ass normal relationship.
I did love her from beginning to end. I liked her story and her character and everything from the beginning to end. Everybody else was kind of up and down for me, and I don't know. It just it was a lot to take in at the end there, and it was just I don't know if it was just I was not in the mood for that or whatever, but I was just not feeling the path they took.
And
for like,
is that
most of the show?
Is that a final? No, just a most of the show thing. Okay.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it wasn't just the ending. I thought the ending. I thought the ending was fitting for the direction they were heading.
Yeah,
It's like, okay, if we're gonna make this, ridiculous shout your feelings type of show here, then this is the most ridiculous shout your feelings ending we can come up with.
Yeah.
So that I was fine with that in like context with the direction they were going. Just as a whole, though, I don't feel like, and I don't want to rehash everything we've talked about before, but I don't feel like it handled the very sensitive and difficult topics that they were trying to handle with the type of nuance and I guess attention that I felt like, they could have done better with.
Yeah.
That was
I get where you're coming from, but on the other hand,
feeling in the end.
I get where you're coming from, but on the other hand, I also think that this show did a relatively good job at depicting how that stuff impacts its characters. Like, I think Sugawara's character arc was really well done. Like how she's stars from this idea of like everyone has always looked at me in a sexual way, and now not even my friend can be convinced of the fact that I have no intentions to steal her boyfriend away from her. So if people are gonna think,
except she does,
if people think I'm evil, then let me be evil. Let me be the villain, pushed and being manipulated by her drama teacher. I think I'm not as enthusiastic about the Hongo arc and her stuff with Milo Sensei, but I think that in the end they avoided.
It could have been a lot worse. I mean, that's for sure.
Yeah, they avoided major pitfalls. Like all of this could be attributed to like, I guess the writer isn't really aware enough of what kind of quote unquote problematic impact this has.
They stepped on the landmine and then jumped back before it could blow their foot off.
yeah, basically, yeah. I think the epilogue helps a lot in that regard, where they show that okay, this is over. She's accepted that this is not happening, and this was wrong, and he's marrying Glasses Sensei,
right.
And all is good and well. Yeah. Speaking of the epilogue, there was one thing I didn't like, and that is very predictably that Momo is the only one who doesn't get a happy ending.
Yeah, she was in the wrong show for that. Should have gone over to Senso
Gear. But yeah, I think
there are definitely good aspects. There's a certain charm to the show that I appreciated, and I did always appreciate the show's like brutal honesty and the fact that it was bringing attention to the topics and themes that it was, which aren't often explored, and certainly not in the ways that the show tried to explore them. I just feel like it could have done a better job with it.
Yes.
Indeed.
Isn't that the story of anime? No, I mean, I think
I
mostly
more credit than that.
I think I mostly agree with you. It's just that this kind of stuff is more up my because I like shows that are like have a certain psychological depth to their characters, but the death is really unsubtle because I'm too stupid to figure it out for myself. So they have to make it really obvious what is messed up about these characters, and preferably also funny. So I think in that regard, the show like pushed all of my buttons.
It did make
if that doesn't make me sound like a creeper who's like, yes, this show is about girls who talk about sex.
I don't think we're thinking that out.
The appeal is of an entirely different kind, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I think there is definitely I think there's definitely value here. I think just for me, I was not coming together for me personally.
Too much of an adult for this shit.
Yes. Says the guy who watched the Mom Show. All right. let's move
time
on from that
for-
one, and
yes,
it's time
let's,
to talk about Lord El-Melloi II's case files, Rail Zeppelin Grace Note. The final time I will read the entire title.
Hell yeah.
It was good. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
I
Be
think.
happy, Jill. Next time you'll have another
Yeah.
super long Fate verse title
What
to
is
read
it?
out
What
loud.
is it? Fake Grand Order, like Absolute
The-
Demonic Front Babylonia.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
get back
something
around
like
to
that.
that one next time for sure. But,
Unlike Fake Grand Order, Absolute Demonic Front Babylonia will probably be. I really liked Lord El-Melloi second case files, Rail Zeppelin Grace Note, having the like goofy distinction of being the only Fate spin-off not about the Holy Grail War.
Yeah.
Which is probably why I liked it so much. I feel like this is one of the only spin-offs that really understood the things that made me like the franchise in the first place, which is that all of the implied universe shit of here's like part of what I liked about Fate in the first place is how they would constantly refer to other shit in the universe that wasn't really important right now, but was probably there somewhere, and how it like connected to Tsukihime in certain ways, and Tsukihime also did this thing, and it created the larger sense of a bigger universe that I enjoyed. And then every spin-off of Fate was like, oh yes, the Holy Grail War, let's find a way to spin off that and not like dig deeper into the other weird shit going on, which is what El-Melloi II does. Kind of gets
just ignores the Grail War.
right, like yeah,
Well-
it happened to the main character, and it was a formative experience for him, and other people are aware of the Holy Grail War, but it is not a central part of the plot in any way, really. And that allows the universe to
Yeah.
breathe,
Yes, I think Iro put it in a really good way where I think with every passing Fate spin-off, it actually constricts the universe. It feels smaller, it feels less grand. Whereas
But Grand
Like-
Order's got grand in the title. Look,
yeah, but I think you know what
Right,
you're
'cause
trying to. What
it
you
kinda
mean
leaves
is,
it leaves it to your imagination, but then once you see it, like you're saying, it's kind of closing in the
right. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to have 1 to 3 examples of what a servant is, but then once you look at Grand Order, and it's like, before I could think to myself, what if this like character was a servant? That would be cool. But then you look at Grand Order, and it's always terrible.
yeah, it's like in a ways, like it does retroactively hurt the franchise because now it's like, oh no, they actually do have a canon design, and it's awful. And I think that like El-Melloi II does a really great thing in that, like, yes, on some level, if you want to be reductive, El-Melloi II is like, it is kind of a dumbass pulpy adventure. Like, the mysteries are not actually that mysterious. Like, if you actually asked me to like summarize how Waver solved any of these mysteries, I don't think I could give you a good answer.
Look, if the show says why done it enough times, I'm sure it'll
Yes,
make sense.
yes.
Uh,
But yeah, it's the sensibilities of it, right? Like the way it carries itself, the swagger, so to speak. Of not just Waver himself, but like the show's attitude towards its universe. It makes, yeah, you said it gives it breathing room. It makes the Fate universe feel grander again for the first time in ages. And like, I'm not a big like Fate, or I'm not like super knowledgeable of Fate, but
you're all
it is
adjacent
neat-
to me.
yeah, I mean, I'm about as knowledgeable of Fate as you are knowledgeable of Gundam by proximity. But it's cool to like watch something that takes place in a universe I'm somewhat familiar with, and then be like, oh, here's like new stuff in it. Like here are things I don't understand about the setting. And the really like lovely thing is that these things I don't understand are not things that this show made up or pulled out of its ass, but come from like sometimes maybe a like threadbare connection, but a legitimate, tangible connection to a pre-established setting, and I think that's really cool. I think that the way it feels is like, as the kids put it, is you feel seen. Like you, Iro, the Fate fan, the OG Fate fan, the original Fate fan, like something like El-Melloi II is like made for people like you, and that's like,
Sure.
I think that's super neat, because I think that like a lot of Fate stuff isn't made for like your subsection of the fan base.
Grand
anymore.
Order has so thoroughly usurped everything.
Yeah,
that
and like that sucks. I mean,
Yeah. So last time I said I was going to ask this question when FGO episode 1 comes out, but maybe now is probably a better time to do it because we're still talking about Lord El-Melloi here. Like, why is this show better than like Grand Order or other recent Fate projects? Because you guys are pretty high on this one, but I'd also like throw in like maybe like Fate Apocrypha or something, like where you into that or whatever. But like,
Fate Apocrypha wasn't very good.
Yeah, like what makes this better than the other?
I think it's just about things that I care about more. If you want to just get down to it, like it's closer to what I liked, what I got out of the franchise before it became what it is, I guess. Like, I look at Apocrypha, for example, and it's not the sensibilities that operates under are not that interesting to me, because it's, what if we took the main conflict and made it bigger?
Right.
Well, Grand Order is even the same way. Like, what if we took the servants fighting and made it more, and in different time periods, and more, and also gambling? And it's like, okay, but I liked Fate Stay Night. I didn't want necessarily just more of that. I liked the specific ways the original did certain things, and this felt closer to that, I think.
Right.
Yeah. I would say for me, like, I mean, if I'm being honest, for me, it's that, like, Waver is one of my favorite characters in the Fate universe, and I think this spinoff does him justice. I truly do. I feel like, regardless of its, whatever, its quote-unquote canon status or whatever, as, like, a light novel series or whatever, but, like, I truly feel like the way they write Waver in this story, it very much is like the culmination and bookend of his journey from Fate Zero. Like, where Waver ends up at the end of this anime is like, it's really satisfying in a lot of ways. Like, it's really satisfying to see like the man he's become, the man he's grown to be, and like how his life experiences shaped him. And it's really gratifying. It's like, I don't want to spoil too much, but like, there's like a scene here at the very end of the last episode that got me a little misty-eyed, like, seeing our boy Waver, like, just how far he's come, and it's I think it's surprisingly well done. Like, I think like it's like in character, like it does a good job of being like, okay, where would this character who went from Fate Zero, like, where would he end up, and why would he be the way he is now? And I think it's surprisingly, like,
they actually
well
do that justice.
Yeah, totally.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you guys did tell me in the last episode they used the mystic eyes to make.
No. That was the penultimate. That was the penultimate episode.
Okay, okay. Toward the end
was
there,
very silly.
They
That's
use
right.
They make the mystic eyes to shoot a beam cannon for the train at the vampire forest, and that does sound a lot cooler than what if Jack the Ripper was a tiny little girl with no pants. Or
like
they unlocked the seals on the spear of King Arthur to shoot a laser at the bad
I'm glad
guy.
you brought that up. Yeah, but like not only that,
Whatever.
but like you explained to me that like the process through which she unlocked the seals actually has a precedence in written material in the old Fate lore of like the mechanics of how that spear works, right? And it's like I love that. Like it's like, but that's what I mean. Is like, they didn't just invent that. It's like they were like, okay,
someone invented it at some point. Like,
right?
Well,
but it's
they're
like
taking advantage of the lore that has been built up over 15 years.
Sure.
Right?
They had to.
And, yeah.
They had to consult the tomes, like. They had to consult the old writings on Fate that like nobody else pays attention to anymore.
Sure.
And I think that's really neat. But
all right,
yeah,
well,
I'll miss that show, you know. And
I'm glad you guys.
We'll see if it ever gets another season, but
probably won't.
I was gonna say, I'm glad you guys got this one in before FGO next season. So we'll we'll continue to ride the Fate train in another direction.
Hooray!
Next time. So, all right, let's wrap this thing up by talking about Granbelm.
And do it with a showstopper, baby.
What'd you guys think of the ending?
I
guess since the last time we talked.
I loved it. I really did. I am really impressed that they managed to stick the landing in a way that in a way I expected to some degree, but the way it carries it through, I was I was really impressed by. I think that it's been such a wild ride, that show. Like, I wish we could get to the plot, like, recap of the last few episodes, because it's been a couple of months, but, like, fucking so much crazy shit has happened that, like, you know, can't get into all of it here, but, like...
The whole identity of Mangetsu.
Yeah, but, like, you know, long story short, the last few episodes were Mangetsu and Shingetsu go up against Suisho, who has revealed herself to be the true villain, and... I think it's a really well done final battle. I think like it has a good pace to it. Like it has its like resting moments, and it has its action, and it has its like, you know, midway climaxes in the form of Mangetsu's kind of final charge against Suisho. And the thing I'm like really surprised by is I actually really came to love the themes that this show, you know, has decided to tackle. You know, of like. You know, there's like on one hand there's the aspect of like, oh, Mangetsu, yes, she's an artificial being, yes, she was made for an explicit purpose, but like that doesn't invalidate her experiences, her memories, her feelings, her emotions, or like, you know, this idea of like at the very end, like the theme becomes like this, like Shingetsu's dream of or desire to destroy magic permanently, like will have like lasting and permanent consequences, like and this idea that like what is the strength of your conviction to see this wish through, because like it will have invalidated the sacrifices of every other person in this conflict. Like their sacrifices will be invalidated, their names will be forgotten, like by causality itself, and like they
really did Anna Fugo dirty in this.
They did. My poor queen Anna got done real dirty in this show, but
Shingetsu barely acknowledges her.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. It's to be expected. You know, whatever. As I always maintain, Shingetsu was never a good friend to Anna. So, but yeah, just this idea that like. I think that, like, my worry was, oh, Shingetsu's gonna, like, get rid of magic, but, like, it's gonna be, like, a soft, like, they're gonna soften the blow somehow, right? Like, oh, like, right. We're gonna, like, the magic Kanai is gonna be like, well, you're getting rid of me, but I'll do you one last favor because I like you so much, or something, right? Like, or, like, we'll do it in a nice way, but, like, you know, Suisho spells it out exactly, like, if you get rid of the magic Kanadis, like, it's going to cause this weird causality backlash where everything that has ever been affected by magic will, like, cease to exist, you know? Like, Anna and Kuon will cease to exist. Like, nobody will remember their names. Mangetsu, same thing. Shingetsu herself will cease to exist as, like, a tangible form, right? Like, or she will, like, the universe will cease to recognize her as a part of it. And like, and this question of like, are you still willing to make that choice? Like, all these people who died in the name of this thing will be forgotten. And like, I really respect their commitment, like not just Shingetsu, but like the show's commitment to this idea that yes, like despite that, it will have been worth it to ensure that the Granbelm will never happen again. And
right,
that's some real mecha hero grit right there, you know? Like that's some like Simone destroying the anti-spirals, even though, you know, what'll happen to Nia afterwards is like a very real consequence. You know, that's like some real ass like.
Yeah, I actually did think about that because if you had asked me to predict what was going to happen in the end, I would think there was probably like a 70% chance everybody's going to come back to life, and so I'm glad that they didn't. I'm in the same boat, but I did think about the ending of Gurren Lagann where they had the power to bring everybody back, and they were like, no, we're not going to do it because that wouldn't be the right thing to do,
right?
So I'm kind of glad they went. I also agree. I'm glad they went that route. Iro or Aqua, do you want to chime in with your any other thoughts on the ending?
The ending of Granbelm mostly confused me.
Okay.
I don't really know how to put it into words, but I get the feeling there is something missing here that I'm not getting, that there are... Because in the end, I couldn't really see a theme or any sort of character development. We started with Shingetsu, and a lot of this has to do with the true nature of Mangetsu. Like, we start the show with Shingetsu, or slowly being revealed that Shingetsu is basically perfect. You know, she is chosen by Magia Konatus. She has all the best magic, and now she even has a friend who was created to want everything that she wants. And so when Mangetsu, at the end of episode 11, I think, was like, hey, you know, I've had my big revelation. I know who I am now. I'm fine. I'm at peace with my identity as a doll. I always interpreted that as being a bad thing, as it's showing that Shingetsu is like, oh my god, what have I done? Because Mangetsu is now convinced that those sentiments in supporting Shingetsu are genuine, even though they are not her own. They are what she is programmed to do. And the fact that she has come to peace with that is sort of supposed to be horrifying. And I just kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for, you know, the show to acknowledge that that's kind of messed up, but it never did. It showed that it was actually a good thing for Mangetsu to be completely dedicated to Shingetsu. I mean, I always thought the show would end with Shingetsu sacrificing herself so that Mangetsu could be a real girl with, you know, proper feelings of herself and her own ambitions and wishes and dreams.
That was never going to happen. I think part of that comes from, and where I would say kind of my criticism of the back half of Granbelm, because I thought it was good, but I do feel like we lost a step after the Anafugo fight. Like, the back half of Granbelm was not as good as the first half for me.
I would agree in the sense that, like, the sad reality of a battle royale story is that as more and more members get eliminated, like, it shrinks the cast.
You have less to work with, right? But more specifically, I never came around on Shingetsu as the main character.
Yeah,
and I think because I didn't like. I didn't like her from the start. I felt like the show was giving her way too much of a pass on like what she did to Anna and all that stuff, and I was not buying her. Oh, I'm so perfect. It's such a horrible burden.
Believe
story.
me, dog. You could go back to the old podcast. I was out there like ranting about this.
I mean, that's it. And this ending doubles down on that.
Yeah, I don't feel like that ever got addressed, and I think part of it is like there's a reason why characters like Shingetsu are not usually the main character. She would normally be like the foil to Mangetsu, which is probably why Aqua was thinking Mangetsu was going to be the final character.
I think their intent was like that she has everything, but then her final like wish is to give it all up and end up with nothing. I don't think it really lands properly. I think that
like it's supposed to be some kind of like noble sacrifice that all she wants is just like
she comes to the realization though, like that. You know, like, there's nobody who has nothing, and that's supposed to, like, make it morally okay for her to give up literally everything and become an Undying Spectre, except, like, that theme had not really been fully established by the end of that show.
Yes, and also, like, the whole thing is that it is really weird to have a show in which the characters start off with having an extreme goal, such as let's erase all magic, and in the end fulfilling that goal. Usually they go through some kind of development that causes them to change their goal. You know, in Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer, they start out wanting to destroy the world, being 100% convinced of it, but they learn that the world is good, and in the end they don't want to destroy the world anymore. And here we have we have Shingetsu saying like, I want to destroy all magic, but the show never really goes out of its way to show why magic is so bad. It's only that Shingetsu has been personally affected by magic through her history with Anna that she says, okay, magic is the worst thing in the universe. It needs to be destroyed. And this view is never questioned except by Suisho, who is just a giggling evil maniac. So doesn't really count.
But the point...
Everything sort of surrounding that about the whole... I'm a doll and there is no one who has nothing and this and that is just kind of set dressing that doesn't really land in the end. Like, this show is kind of in the end about nothing.
I think the point of the Granbelm was to show that people are suffering by magic, that they're forced into this battle, but then also, hey, cool robot.
Well, that's been the case since, fucking G Gundam, where Domon Kashu, seeks to destroy the 13th Gundam fight. Or,
But in that case, they should have made it more obvious how this community of mages forces these young girls into...
Here's the thing. I totally get...
doing the Granbelm.
I totally get where you're coming from, Aqua.
Right.
But, here's the thing. These are plot lines that would need, a solid second core to, properly address. Not to make excuses for Granbelm, because I do agree with some of the points you're making that, yes, it does not fully explore some of its plot points as well as it could have. But also, it's 13 episodes, and I don't know where you... I don't, the story is pretty well paced. In the grand scheme of things, if I think back at what I watched, I think the show was pretty well paced, and I don't know where you could get rid of things or where you could speed things up to address these kind of secondary plot points that you bring up that I do think are valid. But I guess in my head, I it's weird that I of all people am saying this, because I am the person who generally does not like the Ikuhara stable of anime, but I guess I kind of came to accept that Granbelm was never meant to be that literal. It was never meant to be it was never meant to be a Fate Zero sort of story that is also examining the interpersonal and tangible relationships and organizations that are harmed by the Granbelm. It was always meant to be kind of more of a metaphorical clash of wills, between these individuals and the wishes they want to see realized,
And in that regard, I can see your interpretation of the ending of, Shingetsu sacrifices everything through sheer girth to see her wish come true, but I don't think it is an interesting way for it to go. I think I would personally have rather seen Shingetsu evolve into a person who maybe thinks like, okay, maybe magic isn't that bad at all. Maybe because magic gave me Mangetsu, magic gave me my friend. And, the real way to honor that is to maybe, see for it to myself that magic is only used for good rather than erasing all of it.
I do understand that, but I think
I
think it's just for better or worse. The show, like, again, here's the thing. I'll agree it's not necessarily even an angle or a view I personally agree with, but I can respect the show's commitment to its message that, like, this idea that, like, people, like, I feel like one of the themes in Granbelm is that people don't need magic to be happy, right? Like, you look at, like, the episode where like they throw their dumb picnic and they invite all these fucking weird acquaintances that have never met each other before to the mountains.
Yeah.
And, like, this idea is like they're having fun and they're enjoying each other's company without magic, right? Like, these are people who, at least, beyond, I guess Shingetsu, Mangetsu, and Nene, like, nobody else in that group is is aware of magic, or they don't need magic to live fulfilling, happy, satisfying lives. And I think that what Granbelm is, again, it's not something I would agree with, because I do think that, like, in the same thing as, like, in, for example, Gurren Lagann, can spiral power be used for good or evil or whatever? Like, obviously, I think that, like, there is a version of Granbelm that I think does examine, like, actually, could magic be used for good, and is Shingetsu, like, too narrow-minded? But I think it's just like within the scope of the story they're trying to tell, with 7 combatants in a 13-episode anime, I think they decided to focus on just the angle of, like, Shingetsu's conviction to, like, realize this wish. Like, no matter, like, come hell or high water, no matter how much, like, suffering it costs, like, Shingetsu is very much of the mind that, like, it will have all been worth it if the Granbelm never happens again. If, like, this is me maybe now really reaching, but, like, I think back to Shingetsu's conversation about her using magic to make flowers bloom. And, like, she specifically says that, like, these flowers would have bloomed naturally. Like, magic did not need to, like, these flowers did not need magic to bloom. And I feel like in some ways, like, maybe that's a conversation they probably should have echoed towards the end to, like, remind viewers of that. I had to kind of go back and rewatch that. But I feel like in a lot of ways, that conversation is actually very indicative of, like, the thematic undertone of Granbelm's, like, take on magic as a force in the world. That, like,
I think what Aqua is getting at, and I agree, is that theme is fine, and that's definitely there. I would have liked it more if it wasn't just Shingetsu knew that from the beginning. Like, she had to learn that through the course of the show, and then she arrives at the conclusion at the end. So, like, what if in the beginning she was actually just trying to be the mage, and then through the course of the series realizes, oh, I actually have to destroy magic? And I think you could have done that in the 13 episodes. I don't think that needed more time.
I think
that would have been more interesting than just Shingetsu is perfect and she has the right answer. And yes, it is nice that she has the conviction to stick with it in the end, but, like, that's just a less interesting story than seeing somebody, like, grow and learn. Especially when at the whole show, I think we were all like, somebody's got to knock Shingetsu down a peg here somewhere.
I still wish somebody had, but
I think a good way of saying it is that Granbelm has always been a show that tried to be both a super robot show and a magical girl show. And in the end, it sort of had to choose. And it went with the super robot ending, where the protagonists' hard work and determination and grit to realize their ideals, make it in the end. They've beaten all of their opponents. They fight the improbable, done the impossible, row, fight the power, make their dream come true. And I think that is the opposite of what it could have done, is go with the magical girl ending, which would focus more on, development of coming of age, as magical girl shows are often seen as, a metaphor for the coming of age. And that also means, evolution as a character, learning something about one's role in the world. So I think
Aqua, many robot anime are also coming of age stories. Like, I'm not to deny your point. But I just want to point out, so many robot anime are coming of age stories.
You are right. But the thing I'm trying to say is, this idea of that the world bends to the protagonist is a very super robot thing, you know? If it doesn't work, we'll just try harder and it will work.
Yeah.
Whereas in a magical girl show, it usually comes down to the protagonists having to adapt to the world by, working together and stuff like that. And that is how you get the Madoka ending, where you get, we use the established rules.
They solved what they wanted to solve, but they cannot stop magic girls and witches from existing or whatever.
Yes. And they do it within the established framework of, you become a magical girl by doing a wish. And we can fix this somehow, but we can't fix the inherent thing that creates this idea. Whereas Granbelm went with the Gurren Lagann thing, where, Rauro fight the power, punch it so hard until it explodes, and if it doesn't explode, we'll just punch it harder. And that is like a legitimate way to go about it. That is visceral, that is exciting, and that fits Granbelm as much as a magical girl ending or the quote unquote Madoka ending would have fit the show, because it is very much a combination of those two things. But in the end, I think it's a bit disappointing that they had to choose one of the two instead of sort of combining it, just like the show has done that throughout its entire run.
Sure, I'm not seeing the world where I want Granbelm to ape Madoka's ending like that. I feel like that is not. I feel like that is not, to me, what would have been thematically appropriate for Granbelm, and the messages that I took away from it while watching. It is, I don't know. I just don't think it is necessarily that kind of show. I don't see a world where Mangetsu and Shingetsu pull a Madoka and Homura style climax. I guess it's I know that obviously Granbelm is taking a lot of inspiration from Madoka and its sensibilities and kind of tempering those with its super robot aesthetics, but I guess for me, based on what this show has been up till now, what this show has traded in, at the end of the day, Nene got a super fucking cool ass fight, and then became the obligatory nerd hacker member of the group, instead of what would have happened in the world where this show was more inspired by Madoka, and she either gets her head bitten off or turns into an evil witch at the despair of her inability to win the Granbelm.
Yeah.
I
mean, that was what I was trying to say. It chose to be more super robot-y than dark magical girl.
Yeah,
and that's fine. That's fine.
I guess for me, it's
it's just not my taste.
Right, and I get that we have very different priorities here. I guess for me, it's I always saw Granbelm as having magical girl influences, but I feel as early as the Jiguan Log episode, I feel I realized oh no, this is very much a mecha show. It is inspired by magic girl stuff, undeniably so, but it is.
I don't even think it's. I think we're maybe overcomplicating it at this point. I just think they could have made Shingetsu a better character as the main character, or made Mangetsu the main character. And I think they definitely could have done that in the framework of the show, and I think that's the one big thing that bugs me. But
sure,
I think
everything else is pretty cool.
I think the real takeaway from Granbelm was that I fucking told you so, all of you.
yeah. You keep saying it, man.
I mean, now that you're saying this, Gel, I think the show would have been more interesting if Shingetsu had actually been killed off in the penultimate episode.
I would have been either on board with that or just do something to make Shingetsu change from what she was in the beginning and to what she arrives at the end. And I'm fine with her arriving at destroying magic, but I don't feel like it would have been more interesting if there was a journey to get to that point rather than I'm going to destroy magic and go from point A to point B, and at the end, I have destroyed magic. The end. I don't feel like her character learned much or changed much over the course of the
Yeah, I
and
mean,
those types of perfect characters.
believe
are
me,
just not
like,
as interesting.
yeah, if you ask me, like, what is the weakest part of Granbelm, it is undeniably Shingetsu. Like, she is definitely, like, the weakest link in the show, and being the protagonist, that's not, that's a pretty large black mark against the show. Like, I won't deny that. I guess it's just, like, for me, yes, it is very easy to nitpick Granbelm to death. Like, a lot of shows in the vein of Granbelm are very easy to dissect until you are left with the sum of its, like, maybe not as impressive parts. And I guess the thing I want to iterate is that, you know, I don't want to just make an emotional based argument, but I guess for me it's like, I don't know how much of any of that actually matters to me, because what matters to me is that Granbelm nailed almost every emotional climax.
Be careful, G. You're gonna start sounding like me talking about. But how does it make you feel?
Are you just going to say,
Look,
I don't care that war is bad, but wow, cool robot?
No, but I often
like,
fall into this
right, like,
opinion
I guess,
well,
you know what,
I don't care about the details. It made me feel cool. It made me feel good.
You know, look, I'm the kind of look, I've always been the kind of person who can enjoy Gurren Lagann at the same time as Legend of the Galactic Heroes, okay? Like, and it's all about just, like, for me, like, knowing what kind of work you are getting yourself into. And for me, it's like, for Granbelm, yes, you are correct. Like, this show, it does fall apart the harder you examine it. But I also think that, like, I don't know, I guess for me it's just like, on an emotional level, I feel like this show, I felt seen, to use that term again, you know? I feel like this show understood me and my sensibilities better than, like, almost any mecha anime I've watched in years. Like, Iro can attest, like, during the Kuon Suisho fight, like, I was literally like, man, this is really cool that, like, Kuon is, like, spirit bombing Suisho into a spire and, like, impaling her on it, and then, like, ripping Suisho out of the cockpit to, like, fucking stab with a knife. I was like, this is all really cool, but also I don't like Kuon that much as a character. Kind of a shame Suisho's going out like this. And then the show, like, it's like it hurt me, and Suisho's like, I heard you, G. Don't worry, I'm still in the fight. This bitch ain't got shit on me. And I feel like that is, like, the story of Granbelm.
I never thought Kuon was gonna beat Suisho, but
I don't know. Like, I was totally ready. Like, I guess my expectations were so low. I was totally ready for the version of this show that's just like, oh, it's Kuon versus Mangetsu versus Shingetsu. But, like,
yeah,
I really love that this is a show that, like, every single time it could have done the more boring thing, it never did. Like, this is a show that at every given turn, at every opportunity, took the, like, coolest, biggest spectacle option it could, you know? Like with Anna, and, like, with Anna Fugo's whole thing, with as far as back as Jiguan Long, right? Like, every single time, like, this show could have done, like, the less impressive, the less ambitious thing. It never did. And you're right, it's not perfect. It shot for the stars and it stumbled. But the fact of the matter is that, like, it swung for a home run every single time it went up to bat. And I guess for me, I can't bring myself to ever, like, dislike a show with that much hustle.
I would agree with that, except for Shingetsu. I
agree.
I don't think they went for the home run on her.
That Shingetsu was the construct all along.
Oh, that would have been so fucking...
She was the trend made for Mangetsu.
Oh,
like,
that
all
would
the
have
events in the show go exactly the same. Just
that would have been so good.
Yeah,
all the roles have been reversed.
So much better.
Like,
right,
the roles have been reversed. It's just like exactly the same show, but Shingetsu is the fake one. Like, she's the one who dragged Mangetsu into
all right. I got to admit, that would have been really good. You're right. All right. I will concede thematically.
It's literally exactly the same show. Except
that would have been fucking fantastic.
Eat your heart out.
All right, fine. Iro, I concede that to you. Yes, that would have... taken look
Yeah.
fine. That would have taken that show from like that would have taken that look. All right, I will admit that would have taken that show from what is now actually not even unironically maybe in my top 20 mecha anime of all time into what is maybe unironically my top 10 mecha anime of all time in that single decision.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, that's the thing. I guess I just don't want to like get into the nitty gritty of like us like talking about what could have Granbelm could have been, because I think what Granbelm was still like really impressive and likable and a lot of fun from beginning to end. And
I see your argument, and I race you hashtag release the Iro cut.
That'll be a new segment. Iro fixes the show.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't, because I'm trying to assess like how like what my final opinion is. I did enjoy the show. I'm not saying it's bad or anything when I get to but I wouldn't classify my feelings on the Shingetsu thing and the plot as like nitpicking on in how it's impacted my opinion of it, because I did feel like, if we want to get more specific, going back to the Anafugo thing, how like I felt like that should have been some kind of turning point. Something should have changed after that, and nothing changed. And then like the rest of the back half of the show, even not just talking about removing the most exciting character, but also just like it just felt like we were on autopilot for the rest of the show to me. And it was cool. Like I enjoyed it. Like the fights were cool, like you said. And it's not like it was completely devoid of emotion or anything. Like I liked the theme that they were going for and everything. It just like I just felt like it was on a railroad track to that ending, and that's how it was going to end. And in the back half, and to me that was a little disappointing. Is my opinion on it. But
hey, did any of us expect this show to fucking come out of nowhere and?
Right. I mean, I guess that's the other thing, right? Like, who would have thought that fucking here at the end of September, we would be arguing the merits of fucking
talking about the show,
Granbelm of all things?
It was me.
Iro would.
I expected it.
Iro, were you truly, be fucking honest with me, did you truly think that come December, I will be getting in very heated arguments with the rest of you about Granbelm's place in our top 10 anime of the year?
I thought the possibility existed.
Like, did you all think that, like if y'all thought I was going knives out for Megalobox, like, y'all are not even ready for the fucking fire I am bringing to the end of 2019 for Granbelm.
I thought the possibility was there.
I am waving this banner, and I am waving it proud, and I am probably waving it like. Look, we've seen Fall of 2019, and there's some alright stuff in there. I hope Beastars is great, but I am waving this banner all the way until the end of this year.
Yeah, well,
but yes,
it'll be an interesting conversation at the end of this year, because I know for me personally was not a great year for anime, and we're all going to have differing opinions on that.
Exactly, and it's Granbelm's chance to take it.
This season was pretty okay, but like not the best, not the worst. But
glad that our ridiculous methodology allows us to find the occasional surprises, like Given and Granbelm.
Yeah,
yes.
yes, Iro,
and
thank you for pointing out this show, because
we'll have something that will surprise us.
Yes, yes. I think you can always expect surprises in any given season. Like Granbelm, like Given, but I guess it's like it's also just a thing of like, if I'm being more realistic here, it's also just like, let's be real. As you said, Jill, 2019 has not been that strong of a year for anime.
But that's another podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't mean to get into it here, of course. It's just like, you look at like spring, you look at winter, like
we almost didn't watch anything last season at all. So it'll be an interesting conversation. Yeah. But there are some individually very good shows that came out this year, including Granbelm. So that'll be fun.
We need a wrap.
Yes,
I think we're about done. So that's going to put a bow on summer 2019. We'll see everybody next time for the start of fall season, which we're only going to have like half the shows aired by then. So we'll cover what we can cover, but we'll see how it goes. So stay tuned for that. We'll do our housekeeping. You can keep an eye on us on Twitter at the GLORIO blog. Oh, and of course the actual main site, theglorioblog.com. Skipped that one. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, and YouTube. You can check out this podcast along with our other podcasts, Legend of the GLORIO Heroes, where Iro and Gee talk about Legend of the Galactic Heroes, coming down the home stretch on that one. And also GLORIO's King of the Kaiju with Chris and Collins, where they watch old kaiju movies. And you check out any of our other previous projects on there too. But and that's going to do it. So we'll see everybody next time.